Imagine this. You run your first ultra marathon, you get second. You crush it, really good. And then you write down the two dream races you want to do. They're Leadville 100 and they're Western States 100. Both are hard to get into, both are competitive, but you just go for it. You run Leadville 100 and then you're looking at how to get into Western States. Well, with one ticket, the lottery is probably not going to work out. 10,000 people apply. There's like tens of thousands of tickets. Not going to work. So you can look at golden ticket races. You find the one that works for your schedule, but you work full time. It's more of a life than a job. You work at a boarding school. You have to watch kids at night. You coach their sports, but you find the time, you make the arrangements, you head out to Arizona and you toe the start line at Black Canyon. Not chasing a golden ticket, but chasing a mindset, a feeling, a way of racing. And it works out and you get second. You get that golden ticket. You get the ability to go run Western States. How does it feel to win a golden ticket?
Unbelievable.
Let's freaking go, Will.
Let's go.
Dream come true. And this all happened in just like a 2-year rise, really just like a 1.5 year rise for Will Murray. That's who we're talking to today. He won a golden ticket at Western States, 2 Western States at Black Canyon, while working a full-time job at a boarding school teaching math. It's a really great interview. Well, that feels like I'm tooting my own horn. But it's really great what he shares with how he thinks about races and what his mindset, what the goals are along the way, and how he used them to achieve getting a golden ticket. He didn't have pacers, he had one crew, but it was all about the mindset and the style that he raced, and it worked great. It worked perfect. It was so fun to catch up with him. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Will Murray. Today on the Free Outside podcast, we have Will Murray, who's a math teacher, I believe, from New Jersey, a coach, I believe baseball and track. Also a 2:32 marathoner, it looks like. And oh yeah, he just won a golden ticket to Western States. So thanks for joining, Will.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So what was young Will like? Were you into sports? Were you into math? What were you into growing up?
I don't know if I was into math. I was into school,
Yeah.
but definitely into sports, all the sports, but especially baseball.
Yeah. And did you grow up and did you like play in high school? Did you play in college? Did you
I
pursue them?
grew up in Georgia and played through high school. A good high school program in Georgia, but I also was running cross country in high school. Baseball wasn't really my social scene, so decided to pursue running and then eventually cycling.
Oh, in college, you pursued running?
I ran for 2 years for the club team, ran club cross country and track. Was kind of getting a little burnt out on running, found cycling at that time, and it really reignited my passion for endurance sports. So that's kind of where it began.
Yeah. And so then you graduate and then did you move right into teaching and just kind of do those activities as hobbies?
No, worked at a bike shop in college, and then for the first year after college, then I also I studied for a year in France and decided I liked it, wanted to go back. So I got a job with a bike touring company in France, did that for a year, and then worked a couple of different jobs, computer programming, eventually found my way to grad school and studying math again.
Cool.
So a roundabout way to get into teaching, but I've done a variety of things, and that's been fun.
Yeah, I mean the cycling and especially traveling with it sounds super engaging and at least like a really fun way to see the world. So would you just get paid to like take people on trips type of thing?
Yeah, that's part of it. We had like a warehouse in central part of France, and I was based out of there and just working on the logistics, deciding how many bikes needed to be shipped out to Portugal and Mallorca and Belgium and Italy, and the guides would come through periodically between tours, and then I went out on a couple of tours, drive a van overnight from Mallorca to Lisbon. Yeah, everything.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw you respond to some Strava comments in like French as well, so it must be fluent.
Yeah, my speaking is getting a little rusty, I guess, just because I don't use it every day anymore, but, I can still understand it as well as English, and, I like having that be a part of my life. It kind of opens up, another world of books, movies, music,
Mhm.
whatever, and just interaction with people.
Yeah, what's the best French movie that no one that only speaks English has heard of?
Uh, I don't
Or
know.
one of your favorites? Yeah.
Um, on the spot, I don't know. I can't think
N
of
no, no worries. So yeah, traveling and then the classic, like, young person finding their way. How do you end up teaching in New Jersey for somewhat permanent?
Well, I decided that I wanted to go into teaching, which is part of why I went back to grad school, to study math, but deciding that I wanted to teach high school was something that came a little later, and I was in grad school during COVID, so the job market was interesting, classes were online, but I teach at a boarding school, and the boarding school stayed open at least as we were coming out of the pandemic because the students live there and you can kind of create a bubble. So I was living in Washington at the time, Bellingham. Didn't really have any desire to go back to the East Coast, but this was an interesting opportunity. I didn't know boarding school existed outside of, old movies and books.
Totally.
Um, so it seemed like, again, just going along with like I like to do a variety of things. I like to take an adventure when it comes up. So I felt like I had to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. In 2020, I actually substitute taught because I'd always wanted to be a teacher, but it was like hard to commit before you could try it out. So they were just hiring anyone willing to try it. And it was a pretty
Yeah.
fun experience. The stories are crazy. Like kids are all over the place.
Yeah. Every day is different. You don't know what to expect.
Yeah. Do you have to, so they live at the school and do you have like responsibilities outside of just teaching and coaching too with that aspect?
Yeah. So I live in an apartment in the 10th grade dorm building. And one night per week, I'm on dorm duty, which is basically you walk around the dorm, chat with the kids, make sure they're doing their homework, brush their teeth, take a shower, get to bed on time. Um, so that keeps you up until about midnight. Uh, couple weekends per semester as well. I do that. But then outside of that, it's just a packed schedule of activities besides school and sports.
Mhm.
Um, the nice thing is there's some flexibility to like if you have a block in the day where you're not teaching in class, I can get out for a run, or um, we live on campus, so there's no commute. Uh,
Yeah,
so there's some convenience built into it, but it's a pretty. I like to think of it as a life rather than a job because that's what it is.
totally. Yeah. Do you like eat at a cafeteria too?
Yeah, yep, eat at the dining hall, most of my meals. One night per week is, like, with the kids, so each faculty member is assigned a table, with different kids. But then other than that, just go and eat with your colleagues and
Yeah,
good.
it's fascinating. Yeah, I don't know much about boarding schools, but it sounds like you didn't either till you ended up there.
I did not.
So let's go into how did you it sounds like you at some point refound running or moved into running more. How did that come about?
Yeah, so like I was saying, after my first 2 years of college, I was feeling a little burnt out from running and found cycling and just, like, caught the bug. Um
Mhm.
I had no desire to go back to running. I was having a blast riding my bike. I did some racing. I wasn't really like at that high of a level. I moved through the categories in the amateur racing, but it was sort of like something that I was happy to do just as a hobby. Um, went on some bike packing trips. I've done several of those, and so that's kind of I think the thing that fueled my success as an ultra runner now. But when I started teaching, I just didn't have the time to train for riding my bike the way that you need to race the
Mhm.
way I wanted to race. But I always had time to throw on a pair of shoes and go out for a run for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And that's kind of
Yeah.
how I found my way back into it. But of course, like I still wanted to keep the ethos of cycling in it, like go out for a big adventure. And so I found running to like fit into 30 or 45 minutes, and now I'm ending up running 15, 14 hours.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I guess you could like have a bike trainer in the cafeteria watching the kids. Like it
Yeah.
would have been pretty weird to try to fit in the cycling training you needed.
Yeah.
So you get into running and then it looks like you just signed up for Silver Rush 50 kind of out of nowhere. How did you decide on that when there's a lot of East Coast races too?
Yeah, but I wanted something that was really gonna motivate me, something that, like, would take me somewhere for the summer,
Mhm.
somewhere in the mountains, and, and it lined up with summer vacation, it's Leadville. How can you say no to that? So, this came just, one night doing a deep dive into which race could I sign up for with no experience, and that was there, so I did it.
Yeah, you just chose like the highest altitude 50 miler living at basically sea level.
Yeah.
And then did you have like a coach, any training plan you followed going into that?
No, no, I don't have a coach. Didn't have a coach leading into that. I would do, like, 5 to 10K runs on the weekdays, and then I would do a long run on the weekends, mix that with cycling when the weather got good, but I kinda just I didn't really have any expectations going into the race. I figured I'll just see if I can finish it.
Yeah. And then tell everyone how you did there. Your first ultra marathon, 10,000 feet up, very competitive field, like 600 people in it. How did it go?
Yeah, I finished second. They have this ski hill at the start where if you get to the top first, then you get an entry into level 100, and so people are sprinting up this little ski hill, and I didn't want any part of that. I kind of hiked up the hill and then just started finding my pace, and after about I don't know 5-10K, I was just alone in front. But running comfortably, like I said, I didn't have a plan besides to just run so I could finish it essentially, and it stuck almost all the way to the line.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, it sounds like you only lost first by a minute or so or something like that.
Yeah, it was
But
about a minute at the end.
and then so you have really quick success kind of out of nowhere. It sounds like even from your own expectations, does this fuel like curiosity or that desire to I mean, you could have done Leadville that same year, right?
I could have, yeah, but I deferred it just because logistically it would have been impossible. I hadn't planned on going back out to Leadville. I mean, for the Silver Rush 50, I would like flew in on Friday and then was leaving on Sunday because my brother only had a certain amount of time off at work and he was going to meet me there to help crew for me. Um, but it was right after that I decided, okay, I'm gonna go for Leadville next year, and that got me really excited about ultra running.
Yeah, and it looks like you kind of jumped in some other races too, a bunch of different styles too, kind of keeping that adventure alive. Were you just excited to find this sport that it seemed like you were pretty good at too?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know what it is exactly about trail ultra running that I'm good at compared to other sports, but I think it's a variety of factors. Um, I can run efficiently on the trails just through general athleticism. I can go far thanks to my background in cycling and bike
Mhm.
packing. And then I think there's something about being able to eat and drink a lot on the go. For whatever reason, I'm able to do that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, I mean, let's move forward to like let's say Chuckanut. Are you like, do you follow the sport? Did you know some of the big names that were also in that race?
At that point, I had started to follow the sport a little bit,
Hmm.
so I was familiar with it. But I went to Chuckanut partly because I wanted to go back and visit friends in Bellingham, and then partly obviously because of the race. But by the time I did Chuckanut last year, I was pretty confident that I could do well.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, what was it like? Matt Daniels, Francesco Pupi, like Zach Perrin, who actually lives here, Blake Slatengren, who is former Golden Ticket winner. Very competitive race. How did it? feel, I think it's like the first time off the podium, did you still feel like you measured up to everyone at that?
Yeah, for sure, because the way the race went, I felt like I was more in the mix than maybe the results showed.
Okay.
I didn't know that the crew wasn't allowed at any of the aid stations except for the first and last. So I had planned to pick up a bunch of food and drinks at the aid station at the top of Cleator Road, which is in like the middle hilly part of the race. Um, and I got there and there was no crew, and I kinda panicked and didn't even fill up my bottle, so I did the whole thing on, like, 3 bottles of electrolytes, and, of course, totally cramped and bonked at the end and somehow held on in the last 10K for, like, yeah, top 10, but,
Yeah.
it makes me wanna do better this year, so
Yeah, I mean, it's like a really good experience to get the bonk or the tougher race out of the way, and it was almost self-induced by just not having crew there and the
yeah,
panic.
yeah.
And yeah, and so Leadville, you're going back to kind of the special spot, and there's some hype because I'm sure maybe even David Roach got into your ears by that time. Was it kind of big fanfare at that race when you were out there?
It was cool. Yeah, it was a good experience, and I had really, I thought, prepared well for it. It was my first 100 miler, so of course you never know how it's gonna go, but, um, when I came through, Twin Lakes coming back towards Leadville, the crowds there and, all the tents set up with everyone's crew, that's when you really feel like, you're at Leadville, and, that was an awesome experience.
Yeah, it's great you did some of the smaller races and stuff first because that probably ruins the perception of like crowds and atmosphere, energy, everything. It had to be incredible.
Yeah, it was, but I think that the finish is always, if you finish in the dark, it's a little bit anticlimactic. I was in a really bad spot by the time I finished, and most people have either gone home or are not there yet. Um, but like just being with my family and my friends who were able to come out, this was special.
Yeah, was it just a tough spot because it's the first 100 and 100 miles is a really long ways?
I think so. Yeah. But then the next morning, I was just craving all the feelings of a 100 miler again. So,
Yeah, definitely. And you're by this point you've been I don't really know how it works, but the Blair Academy or whatever had written about your accolades a couple times and stuff. Are kids and faculty like recognizing and what do they think of what you're doing with your summer break and just your running at this point?
yeah, I mean, I feel a lot of support from them. Obviously, they think it's crazy, as most people maybe do about ultra running who aren't in the sport. But they also, like, they really celebrate what I'm doing, and I appreciate that. And it gives me something to connect with the students over.
Yeah. What do high schoolers think when you tell them just ran a 100 miler?
They say, "Oh, do you know David Goggins?"
And you say, "Yeah, I ran a 100 miler faster than he can." So Goggins is still in the high school waves.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so 100 miler check. Are you thinking about like golden ticket type stuff? Are you starting to set some goals that are pretty lofty in the sport at this point?
Yeah, like I said, pretty much the morning after Leadville, I I just couldn't wait for the next race, and, I made, like, a list of 4 dream races that I really wanted to complete, um, as an ultra endurance athlete after I did the Leadville Silver Rush 50, and one of them was Leadville 100, which I was already, um, qualified for and registered for, but of course you gotta finish it.
Yeah.
And the second one was Western States. So I pretty quickly went online and checked out the registration for the races that could get me in there. You enter the lottery, but with one ticket these days, it's not gonna happen. So, um, I started, like, moving things around and asking our administration if maybe I could, uh, get out of class for a couple of days to head down to Black Canyon.
Yeah, it was always going to be Black Canyon. Javelina didn't really work.
No, didn't even consider Javelina. So
Okay. And so now, like, you've seen success and things are working. How do you prepare, train? Are you like looking into science? Are you changing anything going into Black Canyon? How are you leveling up here?
well, I've never really been somebody who's motivated by the science of endurance training.
Hmm.
I guess it's a good thing that there are people who are, because of course I learn a lot from them, and I take training techniques that work. But for me personally, I view it as just do what works for me. All of my efforts are like on perceived exertion. I I think my training I would describe as more like artistic than scientific. But of course, there are elements of the science there that have to do with, they're in the background. I just don't have
Yeah.
to think about them because personally, that's not what inspires me.
Yeah. What do you mean by artistic training?
So I essentially came up with 3 training principles that I'll just follow in my training every week. So I don't make a training plan. But first, I know I've got to train my aerobic base as much as possible while still recovering sufficiently. During the school year, that's not really that big a deal because it's hard to even get the volume that I really need. But in the summers, I can do 20 to 35-hour weeks, and then it becomes okay, just make sure you recover. Um, and then the second is once or twice a week, you got to simulate part of the race you're training for. Um, and so instead of focusing on like really scientific workouts, I just think, all right, I'm doing Black Canyon. What am I going to have to do at Black Canyon? Um, and then the third is just be willing to adjust the plan as much as necessary based on how your body feels day to day. So instead of setting up a schedule where I've got a workout plan this day and I've got a weekly mileage, I just have ideas of what I want to do and how I want to prepare for the race. And I see how I'm feeling on a given day and then go do it.
Yeah. And what is one of those simulations for like Black Canyon? What's like an example of how you would simulate something in a workout?
Okay, so I guess one simulation is like getting on the course if you can. And
Totally.
over the Christmas and New Year holiday, I was able to get out to Arizona and check out the course. Did a long run on the Black Canyon Trail. Another is my key long run in the buildup was like a 57 or 58K run here in New Jersey. And it was the day of a snowstorm, but I set up the course in a way that I thought Black was going to mimic Black Canyon. So I did fast running at the start. Then I got on some more technical single track trails with kickers, like not long uphills, but some short ones that I would power up. And that was like in the third quarter of the race of the long run, just to simulate how once you get past the halfway at Black Canyon, the course starts to get a little heavier, and you're starting to get a little tired. And then I did some fast running at the end.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, super smart too. And how does cycling fit into the training plan? Do you have like designated days where you like to get on the bike, or is it like still your first love and just whenever you can, you try to do that?
Yeah, it really is still my first love. But like, for example, this summer when I trained for Leadville, I kind of committed to mostly running. But I would still ride my bike almost every day. So I would run in the morning and then I would use cycling as like an easy second session in the afternoon or in the evening. And then when I did my biggest long run of the build to Leadville, the very next day, I did like an 8-hour bike ride, big loop through through the mountains, like over Cottonwood Pass. I spent the summer in Buena Vista, so went over Cottonwood Pass and down to um, uh, Monarch Pass and back. So,
Cool.
so I can use it as like a second long training session after a long run, or I can use it as just extra volume. But if I have the choice between like you can do anything for fun today, Will, I'm gonna go ride that bike.
Okay. Yeah, totally. And so I guess like a little bit more on the specifics heading in, just knowing it's Arizona, was there any worry about the heat or dealing with that coming from New Jersey?
I felt like I had a pretty good strategy in terms of cooling. I knew I was gonna stuff my sleeves with ice just like all throughout the race, pour water on myself. I haven't had big problems with the heat in the past. I did some workouts indoors where I would practice my cooling strategy. So I had a pack on with ice in the back and sleeves with ice in it, running on the treadmill indoors. And even on the day of the race, I put ice in my sleeves at the start when it was like 40, 45 degrees. So I just committed to basically keeping myself cool.
Yeah, super smart. It was pretty cold at the start too.
Mhm.
And so on those treadmill runs, is there like a gym or something and then there's just a puddle of sweat around you and everyone's giving you a wide berth?
Yeah, exactly. Um, but it's actually a really good setup at a boarding school. I basically live at a sports complex. So I've
Yeah,
got the gym, got athletic fields and good trails out back.
totally. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, let's kind of get more into Black Canyon because I don't know, you're just a huge inspiration to a bunch of people and it's really cool. Like, I don't know, ultimate dark horse. I think they were calling you the guy from New Jersey on the live stream. So it's pretty awesome. So race starts, everyone like 40, 50 people are running sub 6 minute pace kind of out of the gate. Is your mindset of more racing or do you have goals or splits that you're shooting for at the beginning of that?
I didn't have any goals in terms of time or splits. I was prepared to run the first 50K a little under 3:30, and I figured I could do that and then still be able to work off of it in the second half. And so it turned out that's how it went. I think we went through Deep Canyon Ranch to about 3:30. Um, but I wasn't focused on the time. I think I looked at my watch once the entire race, which was at Deep Canyon Ranch.
Mhm.
Um, I was just focused on making sure I was in good position and yeah, finding oh, sorry, I'm in the dark. Cool. Um, yeah, just making sure I was up towards the front so I could see what was going on.
Yeah, and so, as the race kinda goes, people drop off, and then you and I think Seth seem to be running pretty close together, especially around the midway point. Does the mindset just shift to kinda thinking where you are in positioning as you get deeper into the race?
I think that deeper into the race, I thought less about others and more about
Okay.
myself. In the first half, I was really focusing on staying with the front group, and I feel like I took a risk going hard up the hill out of Bumblebee Ranch to
Yeah.
get back to the front group because there I probably went into, well into zone 3 and was breathing pretty hard at the top of the climb, but then recovered on the way down. And I just needed, for me, I personally needed to know I was at the front going into the second half. But the second half, I ran most of it alone, and it's just focusing on your effort, staying with the mindset that you've planned for yourself, and it almost doesn't feel like a race to me. That's part of why I love these races. I'm just pushing
Mhm.
myself.
Yeah, and so let's like, from Deep Canyon City when I mean, you're right where you wanna be, are you nervous or thinking about, like, someone behind you catching you, something like that? Is there that thought because you're on the precipice of getting into your second dream race here? Is there that thought going on too? Like, I gotta hold this off?
Of course, I was thinking that I need to stay with it, but no, I never was like worried about people catching me from behind because I knew how smooth I felt in the first half, and I had seen that it had started to string out, and I figured that couldn't have just been tactical decisions from people. So at this point, I was fully confident that I belonged at the front of the race
Mhm.
because I saw that my fitness and my strength was there in the first 50K. So I was really looking forward, not back.
Totally. Yeah, and so let's go to Table Mesa. I think you came in 3rd or so, and did you get, like, splits on how far ahead Eli was? Are you getting information like that at that point?
Yeah, the crew told me that Eli had just left the aid station, and then I came out of Table Mesa and saw Dylan Bowman, who was like giving me a lot of encouragement, and he was telling me where Eli was. And But then once you get past a certain distance beyond the aid station, there's a climb with switchbacks. And I could see actually both Seth and Eli in front of me. So then I knew where they were.
And then over the next between there and Doe Spring, at some point you passed Eli. What was that like?
Yeah, I could see he was struggling, and I felt strong. But I waited for a moment until I could like really pass him instead of just catch up and sort of trickle away
Yeah.
because you don't want to give him the chance to catch on. He's been running amazing all day, and he's one of the best runners in the world. Um, and so there was a moment where he started to walk, and I just went. Um, and I knew that if I just ran well all the way to the finish, then I'd be fine. I wasn't thinking about places anymore. I just needed to stay in my effort, stay in my mindset. I told myself I need to stay in the moment and not think about what's going to happen when I cross the finish line.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you do cross the finish line, and I actually asked you how it felt to win a golden ticket, and you said unbelievable. So what did it feel like when you could finally stop running and this dream comes true of you wrote down your dream races and you're gonna cross off the second one here?
Yeah. Um, I think like as a competitor, I had totally convinced myself that I was I was going to I was going to do it. I was going to get a golden ticket. But then when I had a little distance from it, when I had just finished and it was over, like I kind of, I guess, realized, wow, that was really unlikely. um, but yeah, it was just joy. Like I was so happy, and
Yeah.
still am.
I mean, it's incredible. Yeah. How do you get a golden ticket home, by the way?
I went to Home Depot that night and got a picture frame box and checked it on the plane.
That's awesome. And then do you hang it in your classroom? Is it in your apartment? What do you do with it now?
Yeah, it's not in my classroom. It's in my apartment, so that I can see it.
Yeah, totally. So now this is kind of laid out what's gonna happen for the next few months. How does kind of the planning and the prep go from here? Do you ask for more leeway to run a little more, or just stick to what's been working? How does it work, and how is life kind of different back at the school?
Uh, yeah. Well, um, I think people at school are also pretty shocked, like maybe people in the ultra world are. When they understand what Western States is, because a lot of them, maybe aren't familiar with it, but then they start digging into, what this means, and they understand that's a big deal. Um, but yeah, I'm just gonna focus on doing the best preparation I can with what I've got. I mean, I know that I prepared well for this race
Mhm.
while I was teaching and coaching and doing dorm duty and all that. So why can't I do that for Western States?
Totally. When does school get out? Do you have some time between
Uh,
school getting out and Western?
we get out the first week of June, so um, I'll probably go straight there right after we're done, um, so that I can get at least a couple of weeks of training on the course. But I mean, it's going to be essential to be fit before that. So I'll train as well as I can here in New Jersey until that time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So now like with coaching too, which you do some extracurricular stuff, what seasons is like indoor track and baseball happen between now and Western as well?
Yeah, so this year I actually helped out with JV basketball. The last couple of years I was coaching the sprinters in indoor track. It's just ironic. We do. I'm, I'm about to run 100 miles and I'm coaching the 55-meter dash.
I
But
mean, you close quick, but I don't know if it was like sprinting quick.
no, all of them can beat me. All the high schoolers can beat me in a 55. Um, but yeah, with coaching now, essentially that takes up 3:30 to like 5:45 for practice, and then if we have a game, then it's usually later than that because we're in a rural area and we have to drive pretty far for away games. But I do most of my training in the morning anyway.
Okay. Yeah, and it looked like your Strava has weird times, so sometimes you can fit an hour in at random
Exactly.
times. So
Yeah.
yeah. And so I guess the logistics too of a golden ticket, you win a golden ticket and you still have to go to drug testing and you have to pay the entry fee for Western states. So kind of just walk through that process because I don't think people realize it's not like a scholarship to Western either.
Yeah, it's not cheap, and on a teacher's salary, but I guess that's the type of stuff I want to spend my money on. Yeah, so I went up to the race director of Western States. He hands me the big golden ticket. You get whisked off to the doping control, and then they sent me an email inviting me to register. You pay $509 or something, um, and now I got to sort out some logistics for getting out to Olympic Valley, rent a place, and but it's money that I wouldn't rather spend on anything else. So
Yeah, no, it's money you want to spend, but it is like tricky, I'm sure too. Just
yeah, it's not going to
crazy.
be a cheap summer, that's for sure.
Yeah, will you drive out there, fly out there? How will you handle it all?
I think ideally I would drive, but that would take 5 days, and I think it makes more sense to fly there right after school, just so I can spend as much time as possible on the course.
Yeah. And so some of the questions I have around Black Canyon are so no pacers, why? And I think you have one at Leadville. Why did you go with no pacers?
I went with no pacers because I didn't organize any pacers. my
Okay.
my sister was kind enough to meet me out there to crew for me. She's actually become like a huge fan of the sport since I did Leadville, and she says it's because of all the interesting people, and I believe her. Like she is actually having fun following the sport, but I also know that it's because she wants to support me, and yeah, so I really appreciate her for that. So just my sister, and she's not going to pace me. Uh,
Yeah.
so I just went
More
for it alone.
more important to have crew anyways. So do you have like a checklist that or like things for to get it right at aid stations with her too if she's not much of a runner? How do you handle the logistics when it's just two people?
Yeah, so I have a notebook that I write down like a lot of my mindset practice in, and all the splits, the expected splits, and like what I'm gonna eat, the nutrition plan, and how we're gonna do that logistically at every aid station. So we just sort of went over it the day before, and um, yeah, everything was pretty simple. Honestly, it was the this is what I'm gonna eat and drink at Bumblebee. This is what I'm gonna eat and drink at Deep Canyon Ranch, and so on. And then things change as well. Like you adjust on the fly, and um, my sister actually met friends at the aid stations because you're standing around there for so long, and by the end I had like a team of probably 10 people who I had no idea who they were, helping me at every aid station. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you had like a pit stop crew by Table Mesa. It was pretty funny.
All
I
right.
didn't realize you didn't know any of them.
No.
Yeah, that's the beauty of running. Have you yourself made friends in the space as well over the last couple races?
Yeah, I have, and it's been cool to meet people, and also spending the summer in Colorado, I met some cool people and that are in the sport, and yeah,
Yeah, maybe you can split a place in Olympic Valley or something with someone and
yeah, that'd be
save some.
helpful if anyone's listening.
Yeah, totally. And so I getting into the you can eat anything or eat a lot too. What is the plan out there? What nutrition kind of works for you on the race?
So Black Canyon, I did all drink mix and gels, and I had more water than in the past, more plain water than in the past. I think I'm gonna stick with that for Western States. At Leadville, I ate salt and vinegar potato chips and like the fruit, like mango smoothies, that you buy at the grocery. And
Yep.
I had a bunch of other like junk food, and it did not work.
Big time. Yeah. I mean, that's like the key of a 100 miler too, just coaching athletes. Like once you jump up to a 100 miler and do 100K, it's like feels like this kind of unopening of what actually works and it's not quite as far too. It can feel faster. So I think that
Right.
kind of helps unlock it. And so how does it feel knowing some of the greatest of all time are going to be running Western states, and you get to be towing the line next to them, and very well deserved.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But I mean, looking back at the history of like people who have done well at Black Canyon and how they did at Western states, they've been up there. So I don't see why I can't.
Yeah, no, I think that I'm right on board. You can do extremely well, and that's the cool thing of earning your way in. Kind of proves against some of the best in the sport already that you belong up there. Was that something you believed before the race too, or was it something you proved to yourself out there?
I did believe it before the race, but every time that you actually do something, then it builds the self-belief. So it's one thing to convince yourself of it before it happens, and it's another to actually have the evidence. And I think that that just can give you that self-belief that's even more well-founded and stronger when it gets really hard. Are you going to rely on something that you've tried to convince yourself of, or are you going to rely on something that you've done before? I'd rather rely on something I've done before.
Yeah, it seems like you have a really strong and healthy mindset going into these and during them. Do you do any like thinking, visualizing, or writing in your notebook of kind of that thought process or when it's hard or what to rely on? Because it seems like that's almost your secret weapon, like even keeled, but also this belief that you can get through it too.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that's uh, impacted my performance over the last couple of years. I mean, I've done endurance sports for several years, but I've never been at a level like this, and the biggest difference is honestly that I'm able to prepare and execute like a mental strategy that works, and it's so important in these races. Like we're
Mhm.
running set a little over 7-minute pace at Black Canyon. Any well-trained runner can do that. It's not a hard pace. It's just doing it for a long time and telling yourself that you can do it for that long. But it doesn't come just from saying that you can do it. It comes from practice and being very intentional about how you're going to keep your mindset um, the way that it needs to be to achieve it.
How do you practice that?
So, yeah, some of it is writing in my notebook. During my races, I have self-talk that's rehearsed and scripted, and I do it during my workouts. Um, so it kind of goes along with that. How can you expect to do something in the race that you haven't done in training? I'm simulating part of the race by going through my scripted and rehearsed self-talk during a workout. Um, and then seeing what works, tweaking the language of it, and I mean, it sounds weird to be talking about, like, the wording of my self-talk during a workout, but those are the things that I think about,
Yeah.
and I think that it helps me.
Can you give an example of some of that self-talk?
Yeah, so I have a self-talk routine for before the race where I'm saying, like, "You belong," um, give well, I don't wanna go through the whole script, but essentially that's it, and during the race, one of my keys was that if I lengthen my stride, I'll maintain my pace. I lengthen the stride to maintain the pace, lengthen the stride to maintain the pace. That's something that came in towards the end of the race because I know that my stride gets shorter towards the end of a race and it
Mhm.
slows me down, but if I've rehearsed those words, then I'm able to remember it in the race.
So it's almost offloading some of that discomfort and putting a mantra, something like that, in its place because that keys on doing a physical, manifesting a physical task to the level that you're telling yourself to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think it's really important in the endurance space, and thanks for sharing because I don't think a lot of people even let out that every we're all in our own heads for the entirety of these long things, and you can it's almost like choosing the dark path or the light path, and one of them leads to a good result and one leads to something questionable.
Mhm. Yeah, but also your mind can wander during the race, and it's sort of a tool that you have to, like, recenter yourself on what you're doing. But thankfully, also with these long races, your mind is gonna wander a little bit, and then you come back and you haven't lost that much time. It's like in a shorter event, like a marathon or something, your mind wanders and you sort of miss the boat. You're already not gonna get the result you wanted.
Yeah. Do you talk to the other, like, were you talking to Seth or Eli or anyone else up there during the race? Or are you very just in your own head during these?
There was some chatting going on in the first half, yeah. But then once it gets hard, there's no
Yeah.
talking.
You're not playing like games like, wow, I thought the pace would be a little faster than this. Some,
No, I'm not trying to play head games with people.
yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. I think it's just really important for people to take away that crafting that in the wording can just really jog things. So will you try, say like a long run, will you try something out and it'll be like not quite right? I want to adjust a little bit of what this is.
Yeah, or maybe one piece of it really worked for me, and so I'll let the rest go and I'll simplify.
Yeah. How can you tell if it's working or not in training?
Um, that's a good question. I guess by feel, like if I felt like I could maintain my effort the way I wanted to, and if I was really like focused the whole time, then it worked. If I'm thinking about other things while I'm running, then I need to revisit how I focus on my effort.
So it has to be a strong enough statement that you hold on to that rather than wandering away from it, essentially.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. No, I think, sorry to dive into that. I just think it's really impactful and just something that people can use in so many realms of life too. Cause, ultra running is just kind of a picture of one realm, but a lot of other things are similarly hard, but just not running per 7.5 hours.
Sure.
So yeah, I want to just to know a little bit more about you. What other hobbies do you have outside of keeping kids in their dorms and running and biking?
Yeah, well, I do a lot of other sports besides running and biking. I play a lot of golf. I've been playing squash, and that's been great training for trail running. Actually, it's like a explosive strength and plyometrics exercise, and hand-eye coordination, foot-eye coordination. The last
Squash
couple,
is so hard if you play someone who's really good. They can be like not in good shape, but they just know the angles and everything way
oh
better.
yeah, somebody's good if like if the other person's running all over the court and they're just standing right at the tee. Um,
Yeah.
Usually, I'm the one who's running all over the court.
Yeah, same. It's the best training when you're not good at it.
Yes. Um, I've the last couple of years I've played men's league baseball
Oh,
here in New
cool.
Jersey. There are a lot of eclectic characters in that league, and I won't play this year just because I'm going to focus fully on training for Western States. But that's been fun to go back to actually playing baseball.
Yeah. What's your position?
Infield, yeah,
Infield.
shortstop, second
Like
base.
shortstop. Okay, cool. Yeah, you got to be quick there too. Good squash players are shortstops probably. So yeah, immediately after, just a couple more questions. Immediately after the golden ticket, how'd you celebrate? Did you do anything? Get a pizza? Anything exciting?
Yeah, had pizza after. Had a Chicago deep dish pizza that night.
In
Um,
Arizona?
yeah, in Arizona.
Classic. You're from New Jersey and you go to Arizona to get a pizza.
Yeah. That was about it. Yeah.
Then just exhaustion took over.
Tried to go to bed, couldn't really sleep.
Yeah. And I guess starting to wrap it up, what's the goal for Western?
I guess I'm still thinking about that. Um, like going to Black Canyon, I obviously wanted the golden ticket, but I set goals for myself that didn't have to do with place or time. They were really about my mindset. They were mindset goals. And I think I'll probably do something similar for Western States. I mean, obviously, I want to finish in the top 10 so that I have the opportunity to keep going back. So that's an ambition. But then my goal is going to be a lot more concrete and something that I know I can achieve regardless of what other runners do or don't do. Because, like you say, it's some of the greatest athletes in the sport who are going to be on the line, and they might have a great day, and I could have a great day, and I'll be outside the top 10, and that'll be what it'll be. But I'm going to set a goal that I know I can achieve. But the ambition is for sure be up at the front.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that mindset too. And just to get an example, because it seems like you're pretty much an expert at this. So let's just take a random 50-mile race. What would like a concrete goal that you would set be? What would like an example of what someone could do?
Okay, so I'll give you my goal for Black Canyon, which was there's like a concept that I'm calling decision time, which I guess maybe is similar to what some people would call the pain cave, but it's that moment that you're getting to in an ultra where you're starting to really get broken physically and mentally, and you have basically three decisions. You can either stop, DNF, you can ease off a little bit but keep going, or you can like dig in and keep going. And my goal for Black Canyon was to recognize decision time as soon as it came, because that's one skill, is to recognize it and not be running for 10 miles and then realize you've had this decision to make and you were making the wrong one. So recognize it as soon as it arrives and immediately make the decision to dig in.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's almost like a process goal, but rooted in, yeah, like the moment, I guess, too, beyond a process goal is usually decided upon ahead of time, but you don't know when the trigger is going to hit, but how you deal with that is something that you've already decided. So I think, yeah, that's brilliant, actually. So, yeah. And then I guess the last thing is, so you are undoubtedly a role model for people who have a full life and full-time job outside of whatever passion or competing at the top of the sport, and in a world where they're increasingly preaching the professionalism, you are able to balance it all. I just want you to kind of talk about or speak to the people out there who have a life outside of just running and are pros, and how it feels to compete, how you do it, and how it's possible still, even when people say it might not be.
Yeah, I think of course it's possible. I mean, variety is important. It keeps things fresh for me. It keeps me motivated for my goals in running. I mean, I think if you do have like a full-time job and you still want to be competitive, it first starts with deciding like it's okay for me to go for this. And um, just because you think you might be handicapped by not having the time that some of the top runners might have, doesn't mean you can't go and have your best performance. So I've sort of become at peace with the fact that this is what I've got to work with, and I'm going to do my best. And I've seen that I can have good results in the past. And so I work it around my life, and it's nice to have like separate things. I like teaching, and I also like training, and I like going to race when I can. Um, so it's possible.
Thanks for listening to the episode. If you haven't, check out the video me and Derek Lytle made on the I keep saying that. The Black Canyon 100K, and how the golden tickets went on the men's and women's side. It's a really fun video, and you get a lot of my humor in there. That's on the Juniper Lab YouTube channel. I'll link to it below. Also, gotta thank the sponsors, John G. I am actually wearing John G pants right now, and it's like -20 here in Montana, and they have fleece lined pants. So those work really good. The pockets are also incredible. I've raced Coconut every single year, except the first year when I didn't have anything. I basically thru hiked the trail back then in John G shorts, because I love the pockets, and especially for like your phone, it doesn't bounce too much and you can hold a bunch of gels. JohnG.com. And we're adding a new sponsor. So Garage Grown Gear. Have you heard of the feed? Well, got to announce something with them in a little bit too. But Garage Grown Gear, it's a marketplace for small businesses. I actually coach a couple athletes who have small businesses and sell their products on Garage Grown Gear. It's really cool because it's like everything in one place. You can sort by packs. I think they're just adding shoes. I don't know if I can say the name of the shoes that are on there, but you can be like stoves and compare all the ones that are on there. They have a bunch of sales, and it's small businesses where they're in one place. So you want to find something American made that someone makes that is an expert on making gear, but maybe just doesn't have the marketing audience or background. Well, they sell on Garage Grown Gear. So check them out, garagegrowngear.com. It's pretty awesome. I recently bought a headlamp from there, and they included this tiny toothbrush. I don't know if they still do that, but it was pretty cool. And I take that toothbrush on ultralight backpacking trips. All right, thank you for listening to the show. If you've made it this far, 5-star review, like, subscribe, that would be great. There's a Substack if you really like this content. There's a Patreon, patreon.com/freeoutside. I do bonus content when I can on there. There's just so many things. So for now, we're just gonna wrap this thing up. And thank you guys for being here. Go follow Will Murray on Strava. I think that's all he really has. Stay elite, my friends.